So I am recording this just so you guys have access to this later. And let me go back to sharing the screen. So far, the recap has been around session 1, where we did kicking off a business analysis effort or an initiative in general. We kind of went through, how to kick off, do the discovery sessions for a business analysis effort. And so that recording is available on my website as well. So you can kind of see session 1 there, and we'll give you an understanding of what was covered for those that are new. Session 2 basically covered activity diagrams. Activity diagrams being more of, is used quite a bit in the industry in terms of understanding the system flow. That's kind of what we spoke about. This third session, originally the plan was to just cover use cases and functional requirements, but that being said, the use cases itself is a huge topic. So I wanted to kind of give it full justice in terms of making sure that we covered the details of the use cases in terms of building a use case diagram and building the narrative of that use case diagram. So if you are new to the field of business analysis, just don't be scared. This is just the start of use case diagramming. If you have been in the business analysis field and just kind of getting an overview or just a recap of the use case diagrams, great. But there's more out there. There's a lot of resources out there that you can leverage. Some companies don't use use case diagrams because in the world of development of product in a project lifecycle, it is kind of time consuming, but it is time consuming to create use case diagrams and narratives in order to kind of build a really quality product. So all this while, just in general, today we'll be covering the use case diagramming and use case narrative. I'll be also covering what is a use case with an example. So all this while we've been using a case study, and the case study was around a vegan restaurant owner wanting to build a online ordering system. Given COVID, there has been a decline in sales. So in order to kind of keep in sync with times, this owner has employed a project manager who has an offshore team. And in this case study, you're kind of the business analyst and analyzing the online ordering system and gathering requirements. So that's kind of a background of the case study that we've been doing. In this session also, this is optional. If you guys want to stay back, I'd mentioned last week that it would be nice to have you guys kind of initiate a project on your end. It doesn't have to be a full-blown project. So the next 10 to 11 cover use case diagrams, 11 to 11:30. Just hoping to brainstorm with you guys to see how you guys can take an initiative to build your own project so you can leverage that when you go out and actually look for a job, because in that you can add that to your portfolio. So topics to be covered is, as I mentioned, use case with an example, components of a use case, and how to build a use case. All right, so that being said, I'm not going to read line by line, but I just want to skip this slide and go to the next one. So I'm not sure if you're familiar, but this is kind of how a use case diagram looks. Last week, we had built some activities tied to the case study that we went through, i.e. the vegan restaurant owner who wants to build an online ordering system. So those activities are kind of an input into this use case diagramming. So what is a use case? It's basically a methodology in order to organize those activities and assign and actually determine the behavior between your users of the system and the activities. So I will share this deck afterwards, but really the high level of this is it's just a way of analyzing the activities and the behavior of those activities with users. It does provide benefits as well in terms of it really makes your analysis foolproof. A lot of software development projects fail because of missed requirements, requirements that were not fully vetted. So this process really helps in vetting and really ensuring that there aren't any missed requirements. Now, there's no guarantees for missed requirements, but this kind of helps make it foolproof. Examples. So things like we spoke about an online ordering system. You can do use case diagrams and analysis for the online ordering system, and I'll show you later on how to do it. You can also make a use case diagram for process withdrawals, balance accounting and sales ledgers, backup departmental case log. So as you interview for business analysis jobs, you may be employed in different domains, right? So you could be looking at either banking industry, you could be looking at insurance. So in those cases, you know, your method of analyzing the processes is pretty much the same, except you need to build the knowledge of a specific domain. So let's kind of get our hands dirty and kind of understand the theory behind use case diagrams before we get into the live example. So there's some pre-work needed in order to build a use case diagram and its narrative. One is, how do you identify stakeholders? So we've already done that in the previous class, but who are your stakeholders? You need to kind of list those, and those kind of end up being your potential actors, and I can explain what actors are. What is the objective of this effort? So the objective, we've already defined that in the previous class, so we have that. What is the scope? Kind of define that. At this point, the assumption is that you've kind of met with your stakeholders, so you have some sort of an understanding of the scope. May not be to the level of granularity, but you have a high level understanding of the scope. What are the activities identified in the activity diagram? So those activities that we identified are your inputs into your use case diagram. So I'm just going to pause here before I move forward. Does anyone have any questions at this point?
Yeah, Lisa, I have it. Actually, I want to know, like, I don't know if I heard you right. Do you have, you're saying I see this recording, so we will have that available?
Yes, yeah, it'll be on the website, and I have a article already written up, so it will be inside this. So basically, I've broken it down by 3 easy steps to build use case diagrams. Yep, it'll be available there.
Got it. So where we have to go where we have to go access this?
Yeah, I'll send it out. I'll send the link after the class.
Okay.
So you'll have that as well.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Hi,
Yeah.
Lisa.
So yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi, Lisa. This is Sayed. Actually, I have a question. I mean, I'm not even this class. I'm not receiving the emails. Even the last previous 2 sessions I took with Rajneesh, I did not receive any emails.
Okay, so if you have not been getting emails, can you please include that in the chat, and I'll make sure I'll put that in. I know, Kaushal, I don't have your email, so I know we've been doing some Facebooking back and forth. So if you're not receiving emails, please include them in the chat.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. All right, so my learning style is very different. I like to get my hands dirty in terms of really doing like a use case. So this theory may not sink in right away. That's fine. That's okay. But you know, just get an introduction. You listen to the recordings. You can read the article and kind of get an understanding of the concepts. Just at a high level, my next step is to go into use case diagram components. So use cases are, as I mentioned last week, activity diagrams are part of what they call UML, which is Unified Modified Language. It's a high-level method or set of diagrams to analyze things. Use case diagrams are part of the UML family. Now, they use specific symbols and notations in order to make sure everything's streamlined, and across the industry, people can kind of use similar notations so everyone understands like what means what. So there's a lot more notations, but these are the basic ones that I'm going to go through. One is you have actors. So we had defined stakeholders in our last session. Our stakeholders can be actors as well. So in the online ordering system, we had kind of determined, you have your customer, and could be any customer, right? So your actor could be customer in this case. The left-hand side normally represents an actor called the primary actor, and the right-hand side, you'll have your secondary actor. Now, secondary actors are normally things like systems, APIs, web services, things of that sort, so system related. That's your secondary actor, and your primary actor are normally people. Think of it that way. Your oval boxes here are basically your activities. In our case, last week we'd said an activity of make payment. That will fall under one of these oval shaped boxes. So really your activities help building up the use cases. Your lines are basically relationships. So an actor in this case, and I'll explain a little bit later as to what those relationships are in terms of our case studies. The rectangular box is your system boundary. In this case, your system, in our example, was the online ordering system. So that'll be this represented by this box, and there'll be activities within this system. Moving on, something to keep in mind, and that's important, is basically there's dotted arrows towards the main use case. Like if you notice, extend and include. And extend is basically, it extends the base use case and adds more functionality to the system. So I'll explain it later on, but two things to remember here in a use case diagram is extend and include. And they may ask you during an interview or during a scenario-based interview process. So just something to keep in mind. As I said, this is available on the website as well, so you can kind of get a detailed understanding of what those components are. A use case narrative is basically, now, as an example, you have use case here, use case 2, you can have multiple use cases. This one use case will have one narrative. That's the relationship. So in this case, you'll have use case 001. In our example, use case case study, we had make payment as an example. I'm going to pick on make payment. So you would have use case number, whatever it is, you will have your narrative for that specific make payment use case. Now, what I have is I've included the template for this on the BA Knowledge Share website as well, and it gets into the details of what do you mean by intent? What do you mean by scope? What do you mean by level? So there's different variables, and there's descriptions tied to it. So and as I'll show you an example so you understand through an example how to write the narrative. I am going to pause here and see, are there any questions so far?
Rashmi, I had a question. Can you go back to the previous slide?
Yeah.
So in this case, the second actor, so you said like it can be a system. So it's always the secondary actor is a system, or it can be something else also?
It could be something else. So I said it's always a system, but with a caveat that there could be, I've seen instances where in a restaurant scenario, you could have an admin in the background here that manually does something with the system, but it's supporting the primary actor in the back end. So it is correct from a system perspective. However, there could be instances where there's an admin that it supports. Another example could be, I don't know, a wait staff over here. And they could be updating the menu orders. And maybe that's the function of an admin. I don't, depends on the use case. But so let me change that definition. So the definition of a secondary actor could be someone or something, normally it's a system, but someone that could be supporting a primary actor.
Okay.
So no, good question.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rashmi.
Yes. Anything else? All right, so moving on. So you have your, so think of the use case narrative in four different parts. It's 4 different parts. So number 1 is your general characteristics, where you list the preconditions, postconditions. This is right there. Then you have your main success scenario. So when, as a business analyst, always think in terms of what is your happy path, and that's your success scenario. So that's the second component of the use case narrative. The third component is basically your alternative path and your exception path. And I'm not sure if any one of you have done QA. I know some of you may have, but really QAs think of it, and testers think of it from the point of view as what's the negative? What are the negatives? Or what is the alternate path if that something doesn't work? So this really helps break down the exceptions and the alternate paths. As an example, and we'll go through that, is when you log into a system, the happy path is you get through, but your unhappy path could be the username or the password are incorrect, right? So then in those instances, what do you do? So that's your third component of the narrative. And actually tied to that is your non-functional requirements. So you might hear a little bit about non-functional. Non-functionals are simply things like performance, whether a requirement is testable, you know, things of that sort. So in our instance, our example, we had said, you know, you want to build an online ordering system, but really, how often should this online ordering system be up and running? That's a non-functional requirement. How, what should that performance look like? Should it return data in like less than a sub-second? So those are kind of your non-functional requirements. Now, I don't want you to be scared with terminology, and you'll get used to it as you get more and more into business analysis. But that's another thing that you may want to keep in mind when you're going for an interview, is that what is a non-functional requirement, and what are some examples. And this helps you break down those non-functionals. All right, so now let's start actually practicing, putting this in practice, right? So we went through how to build, I mean, not how, but mostly like what are the components of the use case diagram? What are the different narrative components? And so now let me stop sharing. And before I jump into the case study, let me ask a question. Has anyone used use case diagrams before? Or is this the first time you're hearing of it?
What was your question? You're cutting off a lot.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, so what, has anyone used use case diagrams before?
No, we're just getting trained, you know. That's it.
Okay, so, all right, I'm gonna share my screen. And can you guys hear me okay? Because you said I was cutting off.
Yeah, you're good at Rashmi. I can hear you properly.
Okay. All right. So last week we had kind of worked on with Lucid Chart. So I'm using the same Lucid Chart. For those that are not familiar with Lucid Chart, it's an online process mapping system, and you can actually process map things out. You can create use case diagrams. It's free, up to 3 diagrams, and then you pay for it. But so I'm using the free version. Industry standard is you can use Lucid Charts. There's a lot of tools out there. A lot of folks use Visio, Microsoft Visio. So that's another way of creating these use case diagrams. That being said, I've kind of done a some pre-work for you guys to understand this. So remember last week we had said, I'm not sure who brought it up, but we had customer as a stakeholder. In this case, in the online ordering system, you can have a new customer. I mean, you could just have a customer and leave it at that, high level. So it really depends upon how and what you want in terms of how detailed you want to get in with these use cases. New customer, in my case, also I've split this up into registered customer as well. So in my example, I have two primary actors. Now, I also have, as an example, secondary actor of a system. I also have a secondary actor of staff. Could be admin, and I'm not sure who brought it up, but really you can have staff as a secondary actor. This diagram is not complete by any means, but you can, as I said, get as detailed as you want. It's up to you. So my new customer will register for an account, right? Some instances you can have guest pay as a guest login as well. I haven't considered that here, but you can kind of put that task or the activity in. A registered user will can basically have will register, but in the registration process, there could be instances where there are login errors, and in that case, there'll be an extend kind of relationship. So extend means it's basically extending that activity, and there is a dependency on that activity, actually this sub-activity, in order to complete registration. So there could be login errors, and then it could throw it out here. Register, there is a verify password, and in that case, there's an include relationship. Now, a new customer, once the registration is done, can log in, and it'll follow the same path as the registered customer. So that's why I kind of built a relationship between new customer and a registered customer. A registered customer can also view the menu. So it's literally taking the tasks we built in the activity diagram and put them in as use cases. View menu, search menu, view items, add to cart, select delivery, so on and so forth. Confirm payment is the last one. And then staff, what I did is, okay, has the ability to add menu items, and I didn't put the arrow here, but there would normally be a relationship in remove and update. So really it's following what they call the CRUD, meaning someone can create, add, update, remove, delete. So those are the kind of the use cases there. So pause here for a few minutes, see if does anyone have questions, comments? And there's a lot of information out there, for free that you can kind of build your use cases and practice. You can even just use the case study that I've shared with you that's on the website to kind of help you think through this.
Rashmi, I have
Yeah.
a quick question.
Sure.
What program application you're using to create this diagram?
It's Lucid Chart. So it's LUCID chart. I can put it in chat. And
Lucid Chart.
yeah, so Lucid Chart is a bunch, and this one's a free version.
Okay.
But if you select use cases as a template, it'll give you all the stick figures and everything.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. As I said, it's free up to a certain extent, and then they push you onto premium. So the key is to kind of use what they can give you or what they give you. All right, so now I normally like to keep an inventory of my use cases. So that's another thing. On bigger projects, bigger companies, there's so much information, so many use cases that it's nice to kind of have a use case inventory in which you're really listing your inventory ID. Your inventory name is basically your activities / use cases that you've identified. Inventory description, extended use case, include use case. So really, what are your exceptions and alternate paths, and what are those use cases? And then you keep building this on, because then it helps you keep track of your analysis. If someone just asks you, hey, where are we with this, or what does this mean? You have that inventory in front of you, rather than scrolling through a big Word document, which I'll show you shortly. So now you've built your use case diagram, and you built the relationships, and who you identify who your actors are. So now it comes the time to really break this into a narrative format. And so this is a template. As I said, I have it on the website under the templates page. So let's go through this. Use case number 1, which I'm calling it as UC001. Now, I put 001 because sometimes you can have hundreds of use cases. So in that case, you want to take into consideration minor things, 001 instead of just 1. Put in those digits there. So in this case, this use case is tied to the login. So in this case, the intent is that the user must have the ability to log into the online ordering system. So we said scope. Scope is number 1, they're new customers. And number 2 is validation of credentials. Or however you dice and slice it, this could end up just being customers. And you could take into consideration the whole branching of new versus existing as part of one use case. But however you dice and slice it later on, it's totally up to you. For me, I said new customers, just so it's specific. System level. So use cases are also used at a business level. So when they're using it at a business level, then it's really the steps that the business takes versus an interaction with the system. System level is more so, this is what the system's going to do, and that's typically how I've seen it being used. Author, you'll put that in, last updated by. Now, this kind of is minor. You have the, you can put the date here, but also keep track of the changes if you make changes. So that's kind of where this change history goes into, or change log goes into. Status, has it been signed off on? Is it under review? So on and so forth. Primary actor, customer. Secondary actor, we're saying staff and the database. So in this case, it could be admin also, right? So maybe the owner assigns an admin to handle these things. Preconditions, this is critical for this activity, is because customer wants to order food from the vegan restaurant online. So that's your precondition. So customer says, hey, I want to order food from this restaurant. That's precondition going into this use case. Dynamic preconditions, I haven't seen that quite often. That's why I put it as NA. You don't have to put that in as long as you have your preconditions listed out. My assumption is this customer is brand new. So that's the assumption here. Trigger is another critical one. The trigger means what triggers this system process to start. In this case, my trigger is new customer clicks on the new customer login button. It could be a button specifically for new clients before they go in and register. What's my post-condition success look like? One is customer has successfully created a login account and has the ability to view the menu items. That's my post-condition. So 3 things to keep in mind. Precondition, trigger, and post-condition. Those are your 3, if I would say critical pieces in this whole thing, those are your 3 critical ones for the analysis. Failed post-condition, customer will be provided with an error message and cannot log in. That's the failed piece of it, which ties into the success actually. So models, this would basically be, well, have you modeled this use case diagram? Yes, just see the diagram that was created. Operation concepts, the wireframe will be developed. So next week, the thought process would be, for next week's session, would be to go through what is business requirements, functional requirements, and then if we do have time, I'd like to kind of show you how to develop wireframes using a tool called Balsamic. So I'll send you the details afterwards, but that's the aim. In this case, we will be developing a wireframe because it is a UI basically. Overview. The user has the ability to log in the online ordering system. That's just a high-level overview. So that was that first component of the narrative. Lots and lots of information, not everything, not all companies use it the same way. But as I said, there's 3 critical pieces in this. Number 1 is your precondition. Number 2 is your trigger. And number 3 is your post-conditions. In this case, actually both success and failure. Before I move to the next one, do you guys understand the difference between triggers, post, and preconditions?
Lisa, I have a I don't get the trigger part. Could you please
Sure.
elaborate?
So think of Zoom, right? You try to log into Zoom. What was the trigger? So in this case, what is the trigger? So think of your login to Zoom. The trigger for you logging into Zoom was what?
The link you sent us.
Correct. So that is you're physically going in and clicking that. That is your trigger to kick off a use case.
Okay.
Another example is Facebook. Your trigger to log into Facebook is, I mean, in this case, you just enter the URL, or you just enter Facebook, right, on your URL, and that's how you get in. So that's your trigger.
Oh.
And let
I
me
mean,
give
any
you
action you perform, then you're gonna get some other result. That's a trigger.
Say it again.
And means any action you are performing, like sometimes we hit submit, cancel, or reset, or like any click, any URL or any link. So
yeah, what is the trigger for some activity to start? So yeah, so it could be, in this instance, login would be entering, putting the URL, submitting, clicking a button. Yes. I'm trying to see if I can give you another example tied to these use cases. So so go ahead.
Yeah, like in this UML, it says like a view item. So as soon as like when like we go and like shop online, we hit we click the button like view items. What is the items matching? So that's a trigger that.
Yeah. So in this case, let's back up a little bit. So this is a good exercise to go through, right? So in this case, we said login. The trigger is someone going and clicking something in order to log in, or entering the username and password, whatever that is. Now, in order to view menu, your trigger is basically someone successfully hit submit for the login button.
Right.
Let's go to the next one, search menu. Now that's available already, I'm assuming, on your screen. So the trigger for the search menu to appear, or the search task to be performed, is that the menu should be displayed in the on the URL on the UI. That could be a trigger. So it's some sort of systematic way of triggering something, right? So
trigger can be interrelated to, depending on something, or it can be
right. Correct.
Okay. Got you.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions?
So the document you're showing on Word, is that like it's like most of the companies are using? Is that how we're gonna like create our use case first on Word?
Yeah. So in general, there's tools that do this, requirements management tools.
Okay.
Sometimes it takes longer to learn the tool than to actually just put it in Word and keep plugging away.
Oh.
So it depends on the company you're at, and depends upon what they give you. I've seen it mostly in Word because it helps me. I like using Word because it helps me think through things conceptually. But if you're used to a tool, or if you've provided a tool, you could use that as well. then there's a learning curve there. But start with this because ultimately your fields and variables are pretty much canned, right? They're going to be the same, whatever tool you use. So just get used to this before you jump into something bigger.
So what are the, can you name of them? Because of course in the interviews they ask, what are the tools, you use to create these kind of stuff? Is it Jira, TCS? What is it?
Jira, I don't know if Jira has a tool that does use case diagramming. I've typically just used Word and I've stuck to it. There's another tool, I forget, it's called Blue something, and I can send you the link afterwards.
Yeah.
But I haven't actually seen Jira do it. You could use Miro, just be creative and just create something in there, but Miro doesn't have the, I don't think it has a pre-packaged use case narrative thing.
Okay.
So
we can always use like the Word form like you have it, and then we can update it, the fields according to the requirement, right?
Yeah, and so that's where just if you're a beginner, just focus on the Word for now.
Okay.
And then as you get other tools or access to other tools, which depends on what you'll know exactly what to look for.
Got it. And one more thing, see, today is my first class with you. So if you can, like the other class that I have not attended, can you send it to me in my email?
Yeah. So I will send the links because they're all on the website.
Okay.
So you guys can get a chance to review the recordings and the write-up as well.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Anything else? Okay. So now comes the fun part. So the second component of this narrative is, what is your success path look like? As I said, big deal with testers. If you have like a narrative like this written down, it really helps the QA and the testing team figure out what those happy paths are, the negatives, the exceptions. So this success scenario, we're saying customer has successfully created a login account and has the ability to view the menu items. So that's your kind of your scenario, the S's for the scenario. Now, number one, the first step, new customer clicks on the new customer login button. Number two, now it's an interaction. There's always like a back and forth. Customer, then the system does this, then then potentially the customer does this. So there's this back and forth steps here, and it is sequential. The system will take the customer to provide their email, username, and password. System will ask. The system will validate if the email, username, and password follow the right credentialing standards. The system will provide a message saying, you have successfully registered. The customer has successfully created the login account and has the ability to view the menu items. This is just a happy path. Now, if you notice, 3, it's asking for the credentials. At 3, there's a fork. There could be errors that are sent back, right? So this is happy path, we don't cover that. Or there could be, errors. In this case is not so happy path. So those are covered below. So in this case, extension scenarios. This is type to 3, that's what we're saying 3A. The system errors out because the credentials are invalid. The customer will re-enter the correct credentials and resubmit. Now, you can be as detailed as you want in this. I just wanted to give you an example. So 3, you're forking here. And then the variation placeholders is the customer will be locked and will be asked to enter another email address if they keep resubmitting. And in this case, if it's greater than 3 times, you could have some sort of requirement built in saying greater than 3 times and lock them or do something, or just have them enter another email ID. So these kind of become important because many times I think I see people focus a lot on the happy path and don't think about the exceptions and the alternates. So I'm going to pause here. Any questions? It does take a little bit to digest. As I said, go back, review the recording, and see how this fits in, and you'll get it. It'll work. You'll be able to process the flow. Question?
Is it like a basic flow and alternative flow you are mentioning and exceptions like we mentioned in
Yeah.
our,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay, okay. So for even for the exceptional exceptional flow or alternative flow, we have to create a UML for them too.
UML or use case?
I mean use case. Sorry, I said UML.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
In this case, no, because you're actually you're taking those exceptions
Mm-hmm.
and those alternates as part of that use case. So going back here,
Uh-huh.
if I can scroll up. Oops. No. Wait. Okay. Yeah. So in this case, in this case,
Mm-hmm.
this is your register or login would kind of be your main flow.
Yeah.
Tied to that is kind of your built-in use cases within a use case. Think of it that way.
Okay.
So you don't have to create a separate use case for that or a use case narrative for that.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
So going back here, and so your last, so people typically don't use this, but I think it's a nice to have. I spoke about non-functional requirements, and this is kind of a good place to put that information in if it ties to the specific use case. So like, what should that login performance look like? 4 seconds seems like a lot, but really it should probably be less than a sub-second. So between the time user logs in to the time that the system sends in the hey, you're good to go, or no, you're not good to go, it should probably be that timing should be less than should be sub-second. So you kind of determine that with either your customer, and many times customers don't know. So then that's where you kind of work with your IT person or your developers and kind of sync up with your customers saying, hey, this is typically how it's done for performance. This is what it should be, kind of thing. Frequency, how many, and concurrency. So this is important. We can have a separate session to go over non-functionals, but really how many users can log in at one time, or how many users can register at one time. And then you can kind of capture your open issues here tied to this use case, or any sort of future considerations in terms of, hey, if this is not, is there anything additional that the customer wants and that we cannot deliver now? You could actually put that in here, but I haven't seen this used a lot. It's always nice to have the information. But once again, as a business analyst, you'll notice that you'll be up against project managers who really want their analysis done really fast. In that case, this kind of is time consuming, but sometimes you get projects where you're given the time to do the analysis, and this kind of helps with the analysis. So that being said,
isn't it the part of technical architect? Like when you're designing a technical architect?
Is it part of it? It could be.
Because whenever you're gonna design, I mean, of course, you're gonna build a software application. You're gonna design an technical architect, right? That's what gonna be the architect of that. So
yeah. So typically, it depends on the organization, right? So I've seen it where architects don't build this. I've seen build use cases, but normally the BA builds this with in conjunction with your stakeholders.
Okay.
So yeah.
So it's depend on the project. I mean, it can vary. So
depends on the enterprise. I've seen roles and responsibilities of the BA being that of more of a systems analyst as well. So in that instance, this becomes a useful exercise. And so it really depends on where the BA is.
Okay. All right.
Yep. So we did the building of the use case inventory, building of the use case diagram, as well as the online ordering system. And so this is kind of what I wanted to go over. Next week, I'll be using this use case process in order to feed into the functional or build your functional requirements and your business requirements. And if we do get the time, I'd like to go into wireframing, which will be very useful for you. Now, this is an FYI, wireframes, it depends upon which company you're with. They might ask you to create wireframes. mean, it's almost like a drawing of a UI on a napkin, but in this case, it will be a system, a tool online. But there are sometimes companies employ UX designers that really get into the coloring of things, but we're not going to cover that. We're just going to cover how to do wireframe so you're confident enough to go for an interview and say, hey, I've done this. Any questions so far? I am going to pause here before we move to the fun part. Okay, so last week we had spoken about basically doing coming together. If you guys could provide potential projects that you think you can work on, so that that'll end up being a portfolio for things like your interviews or even for any sort of future work. That being said, does anyone have any projects lined up, or you guys thought about it?
Rashmi, I had thought about a couple of projects. I don't know, like, whether that will be helpful for building my portfolio. But,
Yeah, actually, just
like
just mention that and we'll see. Go ahead.
Yeah, so one where you had already suggested last session, like the online catering system. Then the second, like I thought, was of airline check-in system.
Okay.
Then was booking tickets with travel agency.
Okay.
And then online grocery shopping.
Online grocery shopping.
So I just thought about these topics.
Okay. No, this is interesting, right? So there's two ways of approaching this. You could just maybe do one. And I guess my question for you is there a specific industry that you're interested in to be a business analyst in? So I'm trying to see if there's a niche that you can focus on.
Maybe finance.
Okay. So I'm just taking notes here. So when you say finance, what are you thinking in terms of finance?
The
finance
bank.
is
The
banking. Banking industry. Okay. So out of the ones you go ahead.
Yeah, and the second domain I was thinking of was e-commerce.
Yeah, that's a big one lately, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And e-commerce, is there a specific niche within e-commerce that you want to focus on, or just e-commerce in general?
In general.
Okay. Okay. And so just looking at the use cases you provided versus your interests, right? So you're looking at potentially finance or e-commerce as your future industry to target for jobs.
Mm-hmm.
So if we were to do that, let's just go through this online catering system. Would that help you with what your goals are?
Online catering. No.
Probably, no,
Probably.
right? So let's put that aside. Airline checking system, would that help you with your industry you want to be in?
No.
Okay. Same thing with booking tickets with travel agencies. Online grocery shopping. Well, online grocery shopping, would that satisfy e-commerce?
Maybe, I'm not sure. No, maybe.
Okay. Okay, so let's put this down here. Have you thought of, like, even in finance, right? Have you thought about like blockchain?
Yeah, I had thought about, but I don't have that much in detail knowledge about blockchain, so I just skipped it out.
Okay. Okay. Okay, because that would be a good one to approach in terms of blockchain, because that's a different technology.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the future as well. I'm just thinking about anything else around banking. Mm-hmm. What about a scenario where you're building out and you're creating like an online ordering system similar to that online banking system for a company. So
Okay.
things like, person goes online, logs in, very basic flow. You have your, your account information. So really it's building out the UI for this brick and mortar, which a lot of banks are online now, but this is a good exercise to go through and to add to your portfolio. Is that something you could look into?
Okay.
Because I'm thinking more in terms of how do you align your portfolio, kill two birds with one stone, and use that portfolio for your objectives and goals in the future.
Okay.
So think about it, and then, see how this will fit into your portfolio.
Okay.
And then if you have things you want to bounce off with me, just email me, and I can get in touch with you. Okay?
Sure.
All right. Does anyone else have any projects that they kind of like to use that as your portfolio?
I think like me, Yasmin, I think I had worked in banking domain. I was a supervisor. So I think the bank domain will work for me.
Okay. So even with banking, right? Being a supervisor so many years, I just gave an example to Unnati that you could probably just set up like a UI for an existing bank.
Yeah.
Same question to you, Yasmin, is what are your goals? Are your goals to focus on a specific industry to get a BA job, or what are your goals?
Yeah, so I think corporate banking, I think it will work for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you said you have the experience in that area, right?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So you have that domain knowledge. You tell me, based on, and this is your first session, right? So maybe you go back and build some use cases, but is there a specific area that you want to focus on?
I would focus on, are you asking like the BA perspective? Like what?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, from the BA perspective.
So like focus on maybe like the requirement gathering?
Right, even beyond that. So just as an example, we did a case study on this vegan restaurant owner that wants to build an online ordering system.
Okay.
Requirements gathering is one of the tasks for the BA, but in general, when you are looking at a use case, is there something in banking? I'm just making it up.
Maybe like, for example, if I'm making a use case, I probably, of course, all the banks usually already have the, functional requirement. So like, for example, if they're asking, I want online depositing, so like, I would like consider like, putting my focus on how can one individual can deposit the online, online banking, how they can use the deposit part on that.
Yeah, I mean, you could build that out, right? So it's just one slice of how to do online depositing. In that case, I'm just trying to think it out a little bit, right? So who would your customers be? Who would your customers be for that specific use case?
So my customers will be like regular users, and is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Okay, so the customers will be regular user, and then from there we use the system to make the use cases. For example, if I want to deposit the check, for example, so I customer goes either to the, if I'm using ATM, I would make another use case for ATM. If I'm using an online from the mobile, I will make a different wireframes for that, and then we will create another one if we are using from the web, where there's gonna be another use case. So every way of using,
every channel will have its own
Exactly,
use case and
their
sub-use
own,
case. Yeah.
exactly. Every own
Okay.
that will have their own way of making use cases. So one use case doesn't end on one place. You have to, each an individual way of depositing, you will have to create your own use case for each individual one.
Yep. Yeah. So is that something you'd be comfortable with doing? I'm assuming that you are looking for a business analysis position somewhere down the road.
Right. I am.
Okay.
I mean, I'm also a Salesforce certified administrator. So I mean, it will.
Okay.
Yeah. So it will be extra bonus if I'm a business analyst. You know, it's always. And
Absolutely.
yeah, I'm trying to get into the business analyst world. So I have a
Yep.
lot of knowledge, but I mean, this is what I wanted to start with. So that's why I joined you guys.
Yeah. No, that's great. So I think if you use that, start with that, and then follow the articles that I sent out. So we went class 1, class 2, class 3, and use that to build out your portfolio.
Okay.
Because it really gets into kicking off the project to, you know, to the point where you're doing wireframes.
Yeah.
So I think we'll talk about it as we meet every week.
Okay, so did you already talked about SRS, because that's where we make the wireframe, right?
Say it again.
SRS, did you already talked about it? System.
No. So that's coming up next. We did go through the discovery of requirements. Then we went into the activity diagrams, which may or may not be what you guys use. And then we went to use cases. And then next week we're going to get into some more details.
Okay, yeah, because you said wireframe, so it will be with the system system requirement specifications. It will come in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So in this case, I'm going to more in terms of functional requirements.
Yeah.
That perspective. So it'll be part of the solution requirements. So that's how you branch it out.
Got it. Yeah, I want you to just help me out here learning more about PA, that I already know. So that would be
seems like you're on your way. So it's a little bit of a push, right?
Yes.
So you can use that, and then Unnati has hers that she can focus on, and anyone else. Does anyone else have any projects they'd like to share? Can be anything. Doesn't have to be.
Lisa, I don't know about the project you share, but this is also my first class. Sorry, this is Sayed first. This is Sayed. So this is also my first class. I like I mentioned earlier, I'm not receiving any emails, but this is with this conversation, I can say I want to go with the hospitality industry.
Okay.
Because I have worked I have worked in the restaurant as a restaurant manager for almost like 4 years. So I have some experience in restaurant industry. So
okay. So if I were to ask you, I think you're coming in as Nabil, but it's Sayed, right?
yeah, exactly. That's my home name that you see, Wanda.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Sayed, so let's kind of narrow it down a little bit, right? So you have the hospitality industry experience.
Mm-hmm.
You could use the current case study that we're working on, right?
Yeah.
You can build upon that.
Yeah.
Or if you're currently employed in the industry, is there any sort of work that you could volunteer for that could help you? It doesn't have to be building something big. It can be something very small. The way you can build a process flow for, you can, create your own thing.
I will. Well, right now I'm not in the industry, but definitely the one like you mentioned, like the restaurant menu, the vegan restaurant menu.
Okay.
I can work with that because I think I will be comfortable with that.
Okay.
Yeah, because this is something I used to do like 4 to 5 years every single day. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So you thought, and you can actually do a better job than us because you have that industry knowledge, so you can kind of build upon that.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. And you'll get those emails. Okay. So anyone else? This is totally voluntary.
Hi, Rashmi. So I want to talk about a project that I'm currently actually working on. So I do have a lot of experience on the data side of the analysis, where I do, kind of like a liaison kind of between the business team and the IT team. So the project I'm working on currently is a is a harmonization project of 4 different databases. So how are they going to come together? How are they going to talk to each other? And what will the end result is what I need to work on.
Okay, so when you say harmonization, can you elaborate a little bit?
Sure. So these 4 databases are coming, data sources, I will call them data sources, and then they're coming from different databases as well. So harmonization is like, this company acquired another company, right? So now they acquired another company and they have to merge this data to bring it together for the reporting perspective. So let's say there is a customer ID or there's an account ID. So how is that customer ID going to harmonize with the other customer IDs in different database? Is it going to harmonize? Is it not going to harmonize? Are the values the similar? If not, how are we going to put this as another object in the database? So things like that.
So are you kind of looking at it, I'm assuming you're an analyst as well?
Yes, I'm the analyst as well. And I'm doing the BA role as well.
Okay, that's good. This is a good one, because are there existing outputs that are dependent on this harmonization? So as an example, the reports out there.
So the existing reporting is already there, which will be replaced by a new reporting system, Power BI. So they had like a legacy system reports, right? Cognos reports sitting on top of these databases. So now with this exercise that we're doing, they will also replace this reporting by Power BI.
Okay, so then it's technical in the sense that you need to understand the data field.
Yes.
So that's good, right? So let's start from the beginning. So if you were to kick this effort off, really gets into you still need to figure out the scope. You still need to figure out who your stakeholders are, because ultimately your end customers will be impacted. So yeah, this would be good from a life cycle analysis perspective. Now, if you do get stuck, just let me know. I can help you get out. Okay, so that's good. Good one. Anything else? Okay. So for those that don't have a project, just feel free to use a case study we have already, or you could use any other case studies that you come across online. As long as you build your portfolio, you understand the concepts, that's what at the end of the day, that's what matters. And the other bonus is if you're currently employed somewhere and you're looking to move to a BA role, just being creative, just trying to say, asking your manager, hey, I'm going through this class. I want to volunteer, and use that volunteer opportunity to kind of build your portfolio, because then you can kind of present it to your manager as well, saying, this is what I'm finding, so on and so forth. So the beauty of being a BA is you'll find loopholes, and companies don't want loopholes. So it helps the company as well. All right. So I will send out an email with the previous recordings. I'll upload today's recording as well. And we'll go from there. And I look forward to you guys actually going through the step-by-step with your example use cases. So, all right, until next week. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thanks, Rashmi.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Rashmi.
Thank you.
Rashmi, just a request.